What is the latest on the dissolution of Parliament?
Well, it'll be dissolved by tonight, past midnight, and a caretaker setup is going to come in. It's supposed to come in for constitutionally, it's only allowed to be in for 90 days, but it's very obvious that there's a big attempt to derail democracy and bring it in for more than 90 days, maybe taking it up to 9 months or a year, even perhaps more. Hence, Imran Khan is in prison at the moment.
So with that in mind, you say at the moment that he's in prison, but all of this sort of suggests that it doesn't look like he's going to be released anytime soon.
Well, the high court, the lower courts are easier to be manipulated and managed, let's say. We have full faith in the Supreme Court. The question is that how long is it going to take for them to take our hearing on? Will pressure be applied and our hearings not be heard? The minute it does go to Supreme Court, the case is a very frivolous case. It has no legs to stand on. We're very confident that once it's heard in the Supreme Court, it will be dismissed in its entirety. Imran Khan's legal counsel hasn't allowed to speak once. It's given no defense. The judge is just not allowing the defense to be heard.
He, of course, has denied any wrongdoing throughout. The sentence is for illegally selling state gifts. He's also been barred from holding any public office for 5 years, as I say, maintaining his denials of wrongdoing. In terms of the length of the process that you outlined there, in terms of the dissolution of Parliament, tell us who will be in charge.
We don't know. There's still 2-3 names that are being floated around for the caretaker. The caretaker, prime minister, whoever it may be, their only job is to ensure free and fair elections and a smooth transition with the next regime. So it doesn't really matter who it is, providing they don't put a complete proxy of the party that just went out of power. So it's supposed to be someone who's neutral and who will lead the country into a smooth transitional phase from caretaker into the next regime for the next 5 years.
What has been the response to his arrest in Pakistan? What level of support does he have?
Imran Khan is by far the most popular leader the country has ever seen. His support is unbelievable. If there's free and fair elections today in Pakistan, Imran would sweep them probably by a 2/3 or a higher majority than even that. Even those who were sitting on the fence, who weren't such big fans, maybe didn't like his policies too much, even then, have now turned in his favor just because of the way that he's been treated in the last 14 odd months, and especially after his assassination attempt, and now him being put in prison for something which is really pathetic. He hasn't sold anything that is owned by the government. Every prime minister is allowed to purchase gifts given to them by other sovereigns at a reduced price, which is a law, and he's paid for those gifts. And that becomes his asset. He's paid capital gains tax. He's put them in his tax records. And then if he decides to sell it, not sell it, break it, flush it down the toilet, that's his choice. They're his assets. So it's just a complete frivolous case, basically.
Okay. In terms of where he is being held, I know that there was a plea, really, to be moved to a different type of jail cell. Tell us a little bit about the conditions in which he is being held and where Imran Khan would like to move to, ideally.
So what has happened is, like I said, that his defense wasn't allowed to be heard in the last in the hearing where he got convicted. But the judgment, even though we believe the judge was massively compromised, who is now in the UK, he got on the next flight and left. He still ordered him to be taken to a jail called Adiala Jail. Instead, that was diverted, and he was taken to a different jail called Attock Prison, which is an old colonial prison, and it doesn't have the facilities as the jail that's on his actual judgment order. The difference is that a former prime minister and an ex-member of National Assembly is automatically allowed to have Category A or Category B prison, which is a slightly better cell, more humane. Instead, they've taken him to a prison which doesn't have a Category A or doesn't even have a Category B. He's in a Category C cell. He's effectively in a cell which is for terrorists. It's called the death row cell. You get put there days before getting hung. Terrorists are usually the ones that are thrown into there. He's in solitary confinement maybe by a 6x8 or an 8x8 cell. He doesn't know if it's day. He doesn't know if it's night. We don't know what food is reaching him, what food isn't reaching him. He hasn't even been given a prayer mat to pray. His family has not been allowed to see him. His wife's not been allowed to see him. His sisters haven't been allowed to see him. He's barely allowed to even see after 2.5 days, they only allowed one of his lawyers to go in for 40 minutes and see him and come out. And in those 40 minutes, he laughed. He's in high spirits. He's a fighter. He laughed and said, they're treating me like an animal and they're trying to break me. And he goes, what else? And then he just said, what else was expected? So he's completely in solitary confinement, which is not what the judge has ordered by any stretch of the imagination.